Welcome to episode 2 of the Seed Growers Podcast. I'm Dan Brisebois, seed grower at Tournesol Cooperative Farm and spreadsheet and crop planning enthusiast. With the Seed Growers Podcast, I want you to get inspired to go out and save some seed on your farm. This episode's guest is Marie-Claude Comeau of Ferme, Radicule. Marie-Claude grows certified organic seed with draft horses in Monceau, Quebec. All her seed is sold on contract to retail seed companies. In this episode, Marie-Claude talks about why, after working on vegetables and seed farms for a few years, she chose to focus solely on seed crops. How she came to farm with horses and the advantages that horses have over tractors on a seed farm, and under what circumstances Marie-Claude uses a tractor. How Marie-Claude has curated what crops she grows in function of her short growing season and to best use her growing space and resources. For the technical part of the episode, Marie-Claude goes behind the scenes of growing 2 acres of cucurbits for seed and using a shop vac to extract squash seed. She also discusses growing bean seed in a wet climate and threshing beans in the field. Marie-Claude wraps up with the pros and cons of growing seed on contract and the joys and worries of shipping large amounts of seed across the Canada-US border. This episode is sponsored by the Organic Seed Alliance. Organic Seed Alliance is a US-based nonprofit that advances ethical seed solutions to meet food and farming needs in a changing world. OSA's work ensures an abundant and diverse supply of ecologically grown seed, tended in perpetuity by skilled and diverse communities of seed stewards. To advance this mission, we serve growers working with seed at any scale through participatory research, practical education, policy advocacy, and network development. Join our online seed community at organicseedcommons.org, search our resources at seedalliance.org, and read recommendations for advancing organic seed at stateoforganicseed.org. On a personal note, I also want to mention the Organic Seed Conference that OSA puts on every 2 years. I first went in 2008, and I learned so much about growing seed and the business of seed during the conference, and met so many seed growers, breeders, and seed companies. It was the single most influential and formative experience in my seed growing career. If you're serious about seed, you should give it a try. This episode is also sponsored by the Bauda Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security. Seedheads is the cross-pollinating podcast where our Canadian seed heroes tell their stories, share their how-to tips, and talk about the seeds they love. Join Steph Benoit and Hugo Martorell as they host conversations that are both technically useful and personally inspiring, as guests share the myriad ways that seeds are at the center of our lives as growers and eaters. If you're interested in hearing from people who are passionate about saving, stewarding, and sharing seed, subscribe to Seedheads in your favorite podcast app, or go to seedsecurity.ca/podcast and get started with seasons 1 and 2 of Seedheads today. Seedheads is a podcast inspired by Canadian seed growers and hosted by the Bauda Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security, a program of seed change. Season 3 is coming in 2022, as always, with episodes in French and English. I'm subscribed to the Seedhead podcast, and I can't wait to listen to Season 3. Back to the show. Well, thank you for sharing that with me, and you sound great. And I know you have a lot of really wonderful stuff to say, and I think that, the conversation that we had the last time when we were getting ready for contract growing, I just as I was listening, I was like, oh, I wish I was recording this.
Yeah.
So I think you have a really great story, and I think you're doing great stuff, and it's really inspiring to see what you've scaled up to in a short time.
It's interesting for me too.
I bet it is. Bonjour, Marie-Claude. Welcome to the
Dan.
Welcome to the Seed Grower Podcast. I'm really thrilled and honored to have you on the podcast, and we've known each other for a really long time. And it's really fun to watch what your farm has been developing into. So that's why I thought you'd be a great person to talk to. So we're having this conversation in the mid to end of March. What does your spring look like at this point? What's going on your farm?
So I just started my peppers this week, which is exciting. There's still another half to go next week. Still waiting on some seeds. We're setting up the heating system for the greenhouse, but mostly I'm still planning and fine-tuning the field plans and the crop plans, just making sure that I'm as prepared as I can be for this year that's coming, which is going to be another big year for me. Yeah.
And so usually when I'm speaking to people, I'm the one who's in a bit of the colder climate. And so I know that we've just had a bunch of rain and most of the snow disappeared. So we can actually see the grass almost everywhere. What does your farm look like right now?
It's still under about 2 feet of snow, I would say. It's snowing at the moment. We're about 2 weeks later than where you are. So yeah, still waiting for the the ground to show up.
And around when do you think you'll be getting into the field to actually start farming in the ground?
So I would say probably second week of May is when I would transplant the biennials, like the roots that have spent the winter in the cold room. And then, yeah, around May 15 would be when we would transplant the first wave of seed crops.
How did you get into farming?
Oh, big question. How did I get into farming? Well, I grew up in the country, so I think I've always been a country girl at heart. When I was 12, my parents moved to Montreal, which was heartbreaking for me, but I always knew I would go back to the country at some point. Of course, when I hit the 20s, I had this big search of self after having spent a couple years in university and not really finding a path that felt like home. I started considering farming. I was questioning a lot of things like, social values and our way of life. I was asking myself, how can I make a difference and still do things that bring me joy? How can I build something instead of criticizing and always being in opposition? So for me, farming was the answer to that. I chose to start being involved in something that was parallel to, the activism that to me brought more anxiety. In farming, I found cooperation instead of competition, for example, and creation, really because it is a creative process. I think for me, it was more of a something natural that got me into farming. That's when I also discovered myself as an entrepreneur because I never really thought about myself that way. And so when I started this creative process of farming, I realized that it was something I was good at and it all like came together. I felt like I could really put all my strengths to this project and it was like so deeply satisfying realizing that because I do feel like creating this farm, I really created something that was tailor-made for me. I mean, of course, it's an adventure, and I learned so much about myself in the process. I mostly learn nowadays about my weaknesses, and yeah, still working on them.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
So, can you describe where your farm is and the layout of the farm and what kind of infrastructure you have on your farm?
Sure. So the farm is called La Radicule. We're located in Manceau, which is in Centre du Québec in Quebec. We're in zone 4B, the Canadian way of zoning, not the USDA one. I grow seeds on about 3 acres. So 3 acres are in seed production. The land itself is 60 acres, including 50 acres in forest. And then the land I could grow seeds on is 12 acres. And of these 12 acres, there are 3 that are in seed production.
And how big is your farm team?
Yeah, so the farm is me full-time. And then I have 3 more or less part-time employees, depending on the seasons and the people. Of course, there's occasional interns and woofers. Most importantly, I have 2 Belgian mares, which are used for primary, secondary tillage and cultivation. They're Daisy and Queen.
So you farm with draft horses.
I do.
How did you get into that, or how did you choose to do that? What was your journey?
It was a pretty short journey. in 2018, just before I started writing my business plan, I was like, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to learn about before I have no more time and no more life? And to me, I always had this romantic dream of working with horses. And so I decided to do an internship with Ken and Martha Lang from Orchard Hill Farm. They're located in Ontario. That was in 2018. So I spent 2 or 3 months there working the teams. And I had no prior experience with horses before that, like not even horseback riding. It was just like a crazy dream that came true. And as I was working with the horses there, I started writing my business plan, and I decided to include horses in this business plan, and that's how I started. I just bought one of Ken's old mares, which was experienced, very important when you're starting. I just bought her and went for it.
And do you have a tractor, any other kind of mechanized equipment, or how much of the work that you're doing is with the draft horses?
This year, for the first time, I will have access to a tractor, but I'm using the tractor mostly for manutention, or like handling,
Moving things around
hard,
that are heavy?
yeah, moving things around, moving heavy things around, like harvest bins. We want to be careful to our bodies, so
So, what are the benefits that you see of having draft horses on? Well, I'd say a seed farm, but on any kind of like small scale farm that's vegetable farm or other.
yeah, that's it. Like horses have so many benefits, and of course it applies to seed farms, but just farming in general. I find that when we talk about draft horses, we can talk about the more technical benefits that come with them, but then there's also like the more philosophical benefits. So of course the technical ones, for me, like one of the big benefits I see for me is starting to work the soil earlier, because they don't compact the soil as much as machinery. So I'm able to start working the ground, I would say maybe 4 to 5 days earlier than my neighbors who use the tractor. And as farmers know, 4 or 5 days in the spring can make a big difference, especially here since we have a shorter season. Another benefit that I find that's a little bit more specific to seed farms is that some seed crops are not planted as tight as vegetable crops. So the 30-inch row system that's usually used on most horse-powered farms, I think it fits nicely in seed production because it allows for more air circulation in dried seeded crops like beans. So I just find that they're complementary that way. On a vegetable farm, I think you would want to plant more densely and get more yield on the space you have. But for seed production, you want things a little bit more spaced because of air circulation and disease prevention. For me, working with horses is mostly I do it because I like it. I find that horses and seeds, they both bring resiliency to my farm system. And I think it's one of the major reasons why I chose to work with horses. But yeah, they're just a pleasure to be around, and they're good conversation starters too. And mostly they're not noisy, which I appreciate.
So horses have a little bit of a different rhythm also than working with a tractor or BCS. Like you don't go up and out and harness your tractor first thing in the morning. Do you want to tell the listeners who might not know about that rhythm what it's like to farm with horses, sort of in a daily or weekly manner?
I find that, well, as humans, horses have their limits too. But like the amount of work they can tackle is still really impressive, but it definitely forces you to, acknowledge that they're also living beings that get tired and that need water, as do you. So, each farm has, their specific way of organizing the day. But I find that, to me, I like doing like a shorter work sessions just to not get the mares too, not, I wouldn't say bored, but too tired or just like apprehensive of the work to be done. So I like to take shorter shifts, like 2 hours 2.5 hours in the morning, and then 2 hours and a half, like later in the afternoon. It just avoiding working in the middle of the day heat. I find that with horses, you can't work, past sunset. So that's also nice. It gives you this, like,
Their natural boundaries to the day.
that's it. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It just forces you to get, be in touch with how you're doing and how are the horses doing.
So Marie-Claude, what is your seed story? What brought you into growing seeds?
Well, I started working with you, Dan, at Tournesol Farm.
Full
This
disclosure.
was, yeah, that's how we know each other. Tournesol is a vegetable farm, but also has a seed business. The first year I worked there, I was on the vegetable side of the farm. And then on my second year, I started taking on more seed tasks. And I just enjoy them. I think it's such a rare knowledge that not a lot of people have. And to me, I just felt like it was important to gain as much knowledge as I could regarding seed saving. I think I also I don't know, I just enjoy the sight of a clean seed lot, and I like how how seeds look and how they feel, and I like that the stories behind them. And yeah, just starting doing more seed tasks and realizing that I really enjoyed it and it was something important.
And then when you were ready to start your own farm, you chose to keep up with seeds as opposed to go into vegetables, which is something that you don't see a lot. Was that a tough decision to make?
No. Really easy one, the easiest one. Yeah, I knew I didn't want to grow vegetables just because I like, having worked on a vegetable farm for 4 years, I knew what the behind the scenes, the amount of work it involved. And I, like, especially at that time, I was still very unsure of which direction I was going. But I knew that, like, for now it would only be like a one person operation, so I could not see myself growing vegetables, and with all that it implies. I also had developed this expertise in seed saving, and I also realized that there was a need for more seeds being grown, like more local seeds being grown. Yeah, that's why I chose seeds over vegetables.
So you worked on our farm for a few years, and we really appreciate that. And where else have you learned your seed knowledge? I guess other than like in the ground, doing it
That's
yourself.
it. That was my answer. Well, mostly attending, I would say, conferences in the States, talking to other seed savers, and then just reading research papers on the internet.
So you mentioned that you have 12 tillable acres on your farm, and there's 3 acres currently in seed. Are any of them isolation plots that are separate from each other for isolation distance?
Not on this land. I'm renting another land for isolation purposes. Yeah, it's like 10 minutes from here. And that's where I grow cucurbits and brassicas that need isolation distances. So I have 2 isolation fields.
So do you take the horses to these other isolation plots?
Good question. I don't. I have access to a tractor there. Oh, I'm cheating.
And how do you find having a couple farm sites that are not right next to each other or not just one place?
Yeah, I downsized this year. I started with 3, and then I only have 2. Well, there's the farm and another one, and I started with the main farm and 2 other ones. Scattered plots, they're not necessarily efficient, and also it just meant that I had I don't know. I tried to liberate space in my brain as much as I can, so I decided to downsize and hopefully gain efficiency. And I think it was a good decision. So I'm aiming to grow bigger lots on 2 fields instead of 3.
What are the main crops that you're growing on your farm?
I have 2 acres of cucurbits, an acre and a half of beans and peas, And then tomatoes and peppers are the crops I specialize in. Tomatoes and peppers, they take up less space, but they make up a good chunk of the farm income, so I still consider them like a main crops.
Do you grow anything else, or is this the bulk is these crops that you've gone through?
Yeah, I grew the odd flower seed or a couple brassicas too. That's it. Like I try to not diversify myself so much. Like I grow a lot of varieties, but not so many species. I grow 70 varieties of maybe, I don't know, I never counted, but maybe, I don't know, 20 different crops.
And so you said that you have about 2 acres in cucurbits. What types of cucurbits are you predominantly growing?
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah. I would say mostly, well, the peppos for sure make up a good amount of that space. But yeah, no, just watermelons, melons, all the species in the cucurbits. I I don't know. I just like growing them. I know, and especially with horses, I want to try something different this year because there's always this big question of weed control in cucurbit fields, and I want to start growing them without plastic mulch this year, which is a little bit scary. But I think if I plant them closer to one another, and then with the horses, I'm able to cultivate in both ways, between the plants, but also in the row.
So kind of like a tic-tac-toe.
Yeah, yeah. So I think with the horses, like I don't think you could do that with a tractor, but the horses they have no problems, going in between the plants even if it's tight. So that's what I'm trying.
And I guess you do grow a lot of stuff, but there's probably a good chunk of that 2 acres that's going to be squash. How do you handle that much squash at your scale?
Well, that's where the tractor comes in. So we harvest directly in the bulk bins. And then this year I invested in how should I call this? It's like a squash thresher. There's probably a better word for it.
A squash extractor?
Yeah, I guess you just throw the squash in and then it just mashes it up and the seeds come out from one side and the flesh comes out from the other side. I mean, you still have to clean it, but it still comes out fairly clean and then clean it as usual. But I'm just hoping that the extractor will make it faster, because one person could do it instead of three people.
What did your squash processing look like last fall before you made this purchase?
So last fall, we started using the wood chopper to open the squash up, and it was really life-changing for me. So it really sped up the process.
And that's a splitter like that you'd use to split?
Yeah, wood splitter, just, when you do your firewood in the fall. Once you're done your firewood, you can move on to squash or the other way around. And then we use the shop vacuum the seeds out of the seed cavity.
Do you want to explain a little bit more about that? Because I'm sure some people are not expecting that step.
Yeah, it's just using the everyday object to try to speed up a process that takes too much time. The shop vac, you just basically vacuum the seeds that are, you cut your squash open in two, then you vacuum the seeds out, and then how can I explain it, Dan? It's like too easy for me. I can't explain it. You make the seed go through different screen sizes. So first I make the seeds go through the 1/2 inch screen and then the 1/4 inch, and then I hose them down with like a high pressure water. And I find that it does a pretty good job.
And then you spread them out and dry them somewhere special?
Of course, very important step. So we built a seed dryer this year. Yeah, so it's just like it's hard for me to explain. It's more like different drawers on top. It's like they're stacked on top of each other, and then you have like I don't even know how they're called, like blowers. They're just a blower.
Like you'd use for a greenhouse, like between the plastic.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it does a really good job. I find that within couple hours, they're like most of the humidity is gone. Of course we leave them there longer, but I find that the first critical hours where you really want to get the seed as much dry as you can, I find that it does a really good job.
And so are the blowers blowing from underneath up, or is it over the seed?
So it's from the side and then it goes under and then it goes up.
So that the air is being let out through the roof?
Yeah. Too bad we can't do a drawing on the podcast.
Do you use this dryer for all your seed, or is it mostly wet seed, or just squash?
No, I would say mostly dry seeds, like all the beans and the peas, they go on this dryer. And then, no, it's a jar that we initially designed for dry seeds, but it also works for squash seeds.
And how long does seed generally stay in the dryer?
I would say as long as I can, because I have a limited amount of drawers. I'm just going to call them drawers. Yeah, limited amount. So as soon as I need one, I just need to like quickly rotate everything.
That's the challenge. Space is always at a
Yeah.
premium.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially, yeah, in the fall, because again, it's something that's different in growing vegetables, growing seeds. Like harvest is all at once. Everything's coming in.
Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here. The goal of no-till growers is to help produce and create valuable niche content like what you're listening to now. We create several different podcasts, from the Winter Growers podcast hosted by Clara Coleman to the Collaborative Farming podcast with host Jackson Roulette and many more. We produce videos at the No-Till Growers YouTube channel, including farm tours and crop-specific breakdowns. And our entire model is to create helpful, valuable farming content that is free and open to the public, so anyone, anywhere can use it. So if you appreciate that and our work, or are simply enjoying this show, please consider signing up to be a patron at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers. There are also other support options at no-tillgrowers.com, or you can even purchase a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, because when you purchase it directly from no-tillgrowers.com specifically, the proceeds go to making you more amazing content like this. Okay, that's my spiel. Thanks, you all. Back to the show.
Do you have any other specialized seed equipment for extraction or processing?
Yeah, I mostly inspired myself from the equipment that Tournesol has. So I have a spiral, like a seed cleaning spiral for round seeds like brassica seeds. And then I have an office clipper. I also have the winnow wizard for winnowing. I have a small stationary combine that, well, is it a combine or is it a thresher? That's why I'm not sure, but there's a fan in it, so I'm leaning towards the stationary combine title for this machine. It's a Chinese one, and we just bring it out in the field when we harvest the beans and the peas, and so we don't bring the beans and the peas inside the greenhouse to finish drying. We just feed them into the machine, and the machine is powerful enough that it does a pretty good job of splitting the shells. And yeah, no, and the seeds come out fairly clean. Of course, we still have to winnow, but it's a huge time saver. Like, we don't have to move, because moving an acre and a half of beans and peas inside a greenhouse is just not realistic. And of course, we're in a climate where we have wet falls, right? So we have to finish drying the dry seeded crops somehow, because they don't get dry enough in the field. And that's why we have, two different dryers. So we finish drying the beans and the peas in this dryer with the blower I was talking about earlier.
Are you able to get the bean and pea plants fairly dry in the field, like just leaving them there?
Yes, but it really depends on the season. And like last year was amazing because we had like 3 weeks, 3 more weeks than what we usually have in the fall. Like our first frost was really late, probably end of September or early October was our first frost last year, and it's usually early September. So that was really unusual, but I mean, I can't complain about it because it allowed for the peas and the beans to get drier than what they normally would have been. But the thresher I have, or the stationary combine as I call it, is still able to handle plant material that's still not quite dry.
And you're able to avoid having much mold by leaving the plants that long in the field.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How much does your horse spacing have to play with that?
Oh, I don't know because I never tried another system. But yeah, I plant the rows I would say between 28 and 30 inches because Queen is pretty good at not stepping on the plants. But no, I mean, I see mold mostly on peas, I would say. And I don't know, peas are really tricky for me because you can't harvest too early because then if they're too green, they'll just like split when I thresh them, or not split because that's when they're too dry, but they get chipped. We don't want that. So it's just finding out the right window to harvest is always tricky when there's like a hundred things to be harvested at the same time. But I find that I'm still able to get like some quality seeds even though we're in a challenging climate. But of course you need to adapt the equipment you're using and adapt your techniques to your climate.
So, what do you think the best part of saving seeds is?
Well, it happened to me last week, so I'm gonna say something about that. But I went to the plant nursery, or I think plant nursery is the right word, and there was like some seed racks from seed companies I sell seeds to, and I just went through the rack and I could recognize some of the varieties I grew, and I was just like so pleased to see my seeds there. They were not under my name, but I knew I grew them, and they still ended up, on a seed rack somewhere across, across the province, but I didn't have to do any of the marketing work or the sales work. So I think, yeah, I enjoyed that.
And now your seeds are in gardens across Quebec and across Canada.
Yeah, and I didn't have to do any of the marketing and website management work.
So that's your favorite thing.
Yeah.
And what is the most challenging part of growing seeds?
Of growing seeds, well, I would say definitely the climate here is challenging for sure.
Do you want to explain why the climate is challenging?
Well, yeah, we have a short season, so not all crops have enough, time to mature. So some crops we can't grow. Some crops we can't grow well because our falls are too wet for some, like the naked seed crop, they have to be grown under some kind of protection. So it's challenging that way. The main challenge for me is, and also, disease management, because you don't want to start spreading diseases across the province. So for me, it's always something I pay really close attention to, disease management and disease prevention. Mm-hmm.
So do you grow some of your naked seeded crops under tunnels or in greenhouses?
No. I stopped doing that just because, they grow so well in the Northwest. So I'm like, oh, I'm just going to let the Northwest do its thing, and I'm just going to do what I do well. So I'm trying to drop the seed crops that I just don't have so much affinity with, or are just more challenging to grow, because for me, everything I can grow, I can sell at this point. So it's more about choosing the crops that are more profitable or that I can get the best quality out of. Yeah.
That's an exciting place to be at.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
So why don't we talk a little bit about how you sell your seeds? You've already mentioned that you're not running seed racks and selling directly to customers. So you want to tell a bit about how you sell the seeds that you're growing?
Yeah, sure. So it's contract production. So I sell seed. It's like a wholesale. I sell seeds to retail companies, so seed companies that have websites or seed racks in plant nurseries, and that's how I chose to market my seeds. And so far, it's been the best decision, probably. Yeah.
How did you get into contract seed production as opposed to selling them some other way?
Yeah, I would say selling at retail is the more obvious choice because of the profit margin that you can make selling seeds by the packet. For me, it was mostly because and I just like growing a lot of seeds. I just like seeing bins and bins of beans, for example, instead of smaller lots. Like I just like to grow a lot of seeds. It was also a business opportunity that I saw. Like I realized that local seed companies were interested in sourcing more locally grown seeds, and there wasn't any other seed farm that grew seeds on contract. So I was like, if I'm one of the only ones doing it, there's probably a good chance of it, succeeding. And then it also fits my strengths because I'm just not interested in, managing a website or trying to deal with 1,000, 2,000 different customers. At this point, I have 10 clients and I just maintain good relationships with them. And these relationships are like managing 10 relationships is definitely easier to manage than 1,000, I would say. But yeah, all the like marketing of selling retail, it's not something I enjoy doing. That's why I chose to market seeds wholesale. And I think there's a good response from the seed companies I work with. And it's something I'll just keep doing in the future.
We are one of the seed companies that you work with, and we're really
Yeah, I didn't
grateful.
want to say.
But we're really grateful to have somebody that we know that's doing quality seed that we can rely on. So thank you, Marie-Claude, on that. Do you want to talk about some of the? I guess you've talked about some of the pros. Do you want to talk about some of the cons of growing seed on contract?
Yeah, I think the biggest con would be probably the profit margin and the managing the cash flow too, because when you grow seeds on contract, you're paid once the seed lot passes the germination test. That means you're probably going to get paid in January or February, which is challenging when you've been investing in that seed crop for a little less than a year. So that's definitely a challenge, managing the cash flow just from a management standpoint. But I find that, and working with seed companies, as I was mentioning earlier, it's really about building the relationship. And I think because seed companies are also growers, they know what growing a seed crop, what it implies. And I think most of them are open to sharing the risk of growing seed crops. And so I think what I started doing this year and what I found helpful was, asking for a deposit after harvest, for example. And for me, it was really helpful. And I found that most clients, most seed companies are open to that. And I think, I think it's part of building the relationship and sharing the risk because we're all, working with the weather and the soil and the agriculture. I think everybody's aware of the risk it implies, and I found that most people are open to helping me in that way.
Would you recommend that? So let's say somebody has some seed experience, they're not just jumping in without any. Would you recommend contract seed growing to other growers?
To other seed companies, yeah, for sure. I would say start small and start with something that you can do and that you've done in the past. If you have some seed saving experience, it can definitely be an interesting way to make money out of the seeds you're growing, because if you're saving tomato seeds, you probably have too many for your own use. So there might be a seed company out there that's interested in your seeds.
And do you think there's a lot of opportunity for new growers new growers who have skill to sell to seed companies?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, especially in the past 2 years, seed sales have increased so much, and I think, there's a huge need for more locally grown seeds and more seeds in general. So I think, there's an opportunity there for sure. And I cannot grow everything, so so I'm happy that there's more people growing seeds. contract seeds. Yeah.
Do you see yourself expanding into more of that 12 acres, or are you at a size that feels manageable for your current operation?
Well, I started the farm in 2019, so I'm starting my fourth season, and since 2019, it hasn't stopped growing. And at this point, I'm just like, I just want to, I can't, I can't really say rest, but I just want to pause a little bit and reflect on my scale, and instead of always, trying to meet the demands, just like, keeping in mind that I should be the one driving the farm and not the farm driving me, is where I'm at right now. So I'm not really planning on expanding. At this point, I just want to consolidate a little bit, just, put more time and effort in optimizing the systems we have in place, making sure that we can get as much yield as we can on the land that we're already growing on.
Have you found that when you've reached out to new seed companies, has it been easy to get seed contracts?
Yes, because I had prior experience growing commercial seeds. Starting like the experience I had working at Tournesol, I think was really helpful when it was time for me to get out there and tell other seed companies that I wanted to start growing seeds on contract for them. It was easy because I had experience. Generally, seed companies are really open to have that conversation, I would say.
Now, you're growing for some Canadian companies. Are you growing for anybody in the US at this point?
I am, yeah. So about 25% of the farm income at this point comes from the States.
How is it getting seed over the border?
It's, I would say, fairly straightforward. I think the main challenge for me this year was dealing with UPS because they lost the seed package at some point. What a nightmare, but it got found and it finally reached destination a little bit later than I would have liked, but it still made it. But yeah, no, basically you just have to get a phytosanitary certificate from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. What they do is they come to my place and they just visually inspect the seed lots. So this year I'm starting to grow bigger lots to export. And because the lots are bigger, I'm gonna need like a lab analysis. That's something new this year because the seed lots are getting bigger. But maybe we can talk about that next year because I haven't done the process yet. It seems pretty straightforward.
Do you do a lot of research beforehand to make sure you can get the seed over the border before you agree to a contract?
Yes, I do. But it's always so stressful because at this point it's out of my hand. All I can do is like making sure I have all the information I need. But once the seed leaves my place, I'm just like, while it's in transition from my place to my client's place, it's always like, to me, the most stressful moment of the year because I, put in so much work and there's just so much hope that that is carried through these seeds, and I just don't like being lost in a warehouse. So yeah, I mean, as much research I can do, of course, but there's always some things that are out of my control. And yeah, it's funny though because like at that point in the season, I should be just like breathing and being like relieved that all the crops, I was able to clean all of them and ship all of them on time. But like, I would say end of November for me is the worst because all my seeds are in transition and limbo somewhere in the warehouse. I don't know. I don't. The tracking number is not leading to anything. Nobody can give me an answer about where my seeds are and when they're gonna get delivered. And yeah, it's funny. It's just the most stressful time.
So is that was that one of the pros?
Yeah, I guess I need to better handle my stress level. I think it's on my side.
Now, what would you tell your younger seed saving self if you were to go back?
Spilling seeds, it's gonna happen. And there's no use crying over spilled seeds, is what I would say. It's my take on the famous quote. I mean, you're gonna drop seed buckets and it's gonna happen, and your seeds are gonna get some kind of disease that you don't know what it is at some point, and I started farming and I was like, oh, my fields are not going to have any weeds and I won't have any disease. And no, it's going to happen. And so just, it's normal.
That sounds very pragmatic.
Yeah.
And what would you say to market growers who might be, whether they're growing vegetables or herbs or flowers, to inspire them to start saving seeds?
I think it's just like starting small and growing from there. If it's something that you like doing, and you should find a project that excites you, and then find a seed company that's out there that's also interested in the project that excites you, and start a conversation and build a relationship. If you're saving seeds, as I said earlier, if you're saving seeds for yourself, you probably have more than you need. So why not grow a little bit more to share with your neighbors, other farmers or other seed companies.
Well then, Marie-Claude, merci beaucoup for being on the Seed Grower Podcast. It's been great talking to you and finding out more about what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me.
And that's episode 2 of the Seed Growers Podcast. A huge thanks to Marie-Claude for sharing her experience on the podcast. I love how Marie-Claude decided to jump 100% into seed production when she launched her own farm, even though she grows in a short, wet climate. You can visit Marie-Claude's farm, La Radicule, at laradicule.com. A huge thanks to Sophie et Cédalton for the theme music. You can hear more of their music at sophieetcedalton.com. The Seed Growers Podcast is produced in part by No-Till Growers with the help of our sponsors, the Bauta Family Initiative on Canadian Seed Security and the Organic Seed Alliance. A huge thanks to Jackson Roulette of No-Till Growers for all the post-production and getting this episode into your ears. He also hosts the Collaborative Farming Podcast. You should check it out. You can find more seed growing resources on my blog at goingtoseed.net. While you're there, you can subscribe to my newsletter full of seed growing, crop planning, and farm spreadsheets. If you haven't already subscribed to this podcast, now's the time, because there's another episode coming out next week. Until then, happy farming.